Hello YouTube, I'm back. First of all, short announcement, I've changed my channel name from Pulse Punk to Pulse Man. I think if I'm honest with myself, I'm not much of a punk, I'm certainly a man. So hence the name change. This video is about the recent announcement from Richard Hart that the freemium pulse that's given to Ethereum holders will no longer be taken back after 30 days. I'm going to explore what that might mean for price and adoption. So please continue watching. As always, I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. I have and I will continue to be wrong about many things. Do your own research. It's very possible that any cryptocurrency can go to zero. Hacks can happen, bugs can happen, anything can happen. So please bear that in mind. So originally the plan was that all Ethereum users, as part of the fork, would get a free allocation of one Pulse token to one Ethereum. And after 30 days, any unmoved pulse would be reclaimed. The announcement that happened about a week ago was to improve launch time, plus, I'm speculating here, extrapolating, I think also to possibly remove downtime on the network, given the amount of effort it would take to perform that reclaim of funds after 30 days. Will no longer be reclaiming the freemium pulse given out to Ethereum users after 30 days. So let's do some impact analysis. Size-wise, what are we talking about? So currently the supply of Ethereum is 118 million. So 118 million freemium pulse will be distributed amongst the hundreds of thousands of Ethereum wallets. Now, in the grand scheme of things, 118 million pulse tokens is not going to be very much. If you look at the sacrifice phase, anyone who sacrificed more than $10,000 is likely going to get more pulse than all of the Ethereum users who are being given the freemium. So what does that look like as a percentage of overall supply? Assuming 100 trillion supply of Pulse, I think Richard actually mentioned today in a video that I watched that it's probably going to be closer to 150 trillion, but hey, close enough. You're talking about a very small percentage, 0.00012%. If you look at excluding the origin address, which I think you probably should do for most of our calculations and guesstimates, based on the fact that they tend to not do anything and stay out of everyone's way. If you assume a 10 trillion supply, then you're talking about 0.0012%. Again, really small percentage. And just to reiterate, 6,000 of the sacrifices in the sacrifice phase, i.e. 14% of sacrifices, are likely to get more pulse than all of the Ethereum users are getting as freemium. I also took a look at what exchanges might get in terms of freemium. So clearly exchanges have Ethereum wallets and therefore they will be given freemium Pulse tokens, I assume. Perhaps Richard may have a plan to exclude them, but I haven't heard anything about that yet. But even so, I don't think it's going to be particularly significant based on the fact that having a look on Etherscan at the holdings of the major exchanges, we're probably talking 20 million of that 120 million freemium going to exchanges. Perhaps they could use it for providing some kind of liquidity on their exchanges, but I suspect it's going to be way too low. So they would still have to go to the open market to get some Pulse coin if they wanted to offer it on their exchanges. So let's explore what the pros and cons are of this decision. Ethereum users, in my opinion, are more likely to experiment with PulseChain based on the fact that they will have a pulse balance in their MetaMask once they swap from the Ethereum mainnet to the PulseChain mainnet. So if you imagine if we had taken back the freemium, it's going to be harder to onboard someone. They're going to have to switch network in MetaMask and then somehow get hold of some Pulse to be able to go and explore the network, be able to explore using some of the applications. Um, they would have all of their PRC20s, and so some stuff would work, but you're going to need Pulse to be able to perform transactions for the most part, I suspect, and therefore there's a stumbling block for people. They're going to have to somehow get hold of some Pulse by going to one of the exchanges, etc. So I think it does lower the friction for entry for new users. Um, Another pro, exchanges will have some free Pulse, so maybe they're incentivized slightly to list this, but I mean the amounts they're being given are very small, so I suspect not. There might be some interesting conversations though for people who have large holdings of Ethereum on exchanges, asking the likes of Binance, hey, where are my Pulse? I want them. Everyone knows not your keys, not your crypto, and airdrops, etc. But there is precedent in the past where exchanges have passed on the freemium they've been given. So there might be some interesting conversations. And again, it's only going to raise the profile of PulseChain. What are the cons? Well, interested Ethereum users will no longer need to buy Pulse to experiment. So the flip side of the first pro I gave, from a price point of view, there is going to be, I think, less buying demand for Pulse tokens initially because people won't need to experiment with the network. Now, maybe that gets offset by the fact that more people will be uh, more engaged and more interested in using uh, the environment more based on the fact that it's easier to get involved. But I mean, there is going to, I think, be some slightly less buying pressure initially. Ethereum users won't need to buy Pulse to sell their PRC20s. So again, same theme, perhaps slightly less buying pressure on Pulse initially, because if you want to sell your PRC20s, you've probably got enough Pulse to go off and do that transaction and use the bridges and the liquidity sites like PulseSwap or whatever it's going to be called. And then one that I really need to explore more in terms of the actual details. I suspect if you're a very low frequency user, you may be in a position where if you have a reasonable amount of Ethereum currently, you never need to buy Pulse. Now, that's based on the fact that if transaction fees are going to be very, very low, that's the whole point of Pulse, is we want to lower the transaction fees. So let's say you have 100 Pulse. Well, if transactions are 0.0001 Pulse to do, an average transaction, you might actually never need to buy any Pulse. Now, clearly there's other use cases for buying Pulse. You might want to provide liquidity. You might be using one of the other applications where you want to have a higher balance in terms of US dollars equivalent for the things you're trying to interact with. If you're trying to, provide liquidity, if you're trying to use one of these other applications like buy an NFT or do some other kind of computational work. So it will be offset, but I think there is definitely going to be some high Ethereum holders who aren't planning to do much more than simple transactions, who will probably end up with enough Pulse to last them for a few years perhaps. But I don't think that's going to be the majority of people. So let's do a conclusion summary. The freemium is a very small amount of the total supply. We don't have to worry about the sacrifices being diluted at all. It's a tiny drop in the ocean. The amount that people are going to be given is going to be insignificant, in my opinion. It probably overall is going to help onboarding, which I think overall is going to be good long term for the price because we're going to have more people with slicker access to explore and then hopefully get hooked on PulseChain. Perhaps there's going to be a slight reduction in the initial pump and demand for Pulse. I'm not super convinced on that one. I think the second point I just made around slicker onboarding is going to actually outweigh that. And my final point is I need to understand better how long the freemium may last for your average user based on the typical kind of transactions they're going to perform. That's a tough one. I did mention I'm planning a video around that already in my last video. I'm working on it. It's tricky to calculate, but look out for my next video. I'll cover it in that. So I'm logging off. I'm working on two other videos, gas rights and predicted fees, like I touched on a moment ago. And I'm also working on the topic of us being continue to be gate kept on centralized market cap sites. Is that going to continue? Bearing in mind that Binance Smart Chain is clearly a competitor, and I believe they're in CoinMarketCap. I'm going to explore that topic. Let me know in the comments which video you're most interested in. Let me know if I've made any mistakes. Let me know if you like the videos. I think I've mentioned before, I'm in this because I want to get information back from everyone. So please do comment and let me know what you think. And as always, really interested in people's price predictions. Thanks a lot. All the best.